Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. I am so excited about our guest today. I met her when she just had started her business, and it was an idea in her mind, and she was gathering a few women around a table to talk about how they could get from the point where they were to the next point. And boy, has she figured this out so well. She is the CEO and founder of Colorcomm. She's also the author of a new book that has just come out called What Do You Need? She is Lauren Wesley Wilson. She's a well known figure in media relations, diversity, and crisis communications. Her career includes political communications, where she contributed to President Barack Obama's reelection campaign. That's very exciting. We're going to ask her about that. She has been featured in the Washington Post, in Forbes, People, Adweek, Ad Age, PR Week, Bustle, Essence, Ebony, Town and Country, and many, many other notable publications. She has been recognized by PR Week's 50 Most Powerful in PR, Ad Age, Women to Watch, PR Week's 40 Under 40, and the Route 100. So her book, What Do You Need? How Women of Color Can Take Ownership of Their Careers to Accelerate Their Path to Success, was just released, and we are so fortunate to be able to talk to her today about her book, about the work that she's been doing to empower women of color. We're just very, very excited. Please join me in welcoming Lauren Wesley Wilson.
Hi.
Ooh, I'm so proud of you for starters.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. I'm just looking forward to our conversation.
Yes. So I remember when you started Colorcomm. Was that
Yes.
is it 15 years now?
Nearly. We're turning 13 in May. So
Okay, I was giving you some extra time, but
yes.
but it's been you know, it's grown strategically, but also quickly. What made you decide to create the organization Colorcomm? What was the need that you were looking to fill?
So, 13 years ago, I was looking for my needs have changed and they've evolved, but at the time, I was really looking for mentorship, for just an understanding and appreciation of people who knew the type of work that I did. Many times we have friends which is great. We have friends that don't really know what we do. And that's all. And in
So
some ways,
often, right?
right. In some ways that's fine, right? Because you're not connecting on work, you're connecting on interest or things like that. But many of my friends had no clue what I did for a living. And I was looking for help. I was looking for ways to advance, and I was looking for what assignment should I be doing better, and just looking for that guidance. And I felt very lost as a 25-year-old. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I set out to look for that mentorship. And so before starting Colorcomm, I had one experience where I had chased down a woman with a big title at a big company to be my mentor. And the biggest mistake I did was asking her to lunch, because the lunch kept getting rescheduled. And I look up and it was a year later and we finally got together, but it took a whole year. And in that time, I realized I missed out on really connecting with a true mentor who could help guide me in my career, because I was so laser focused on that one person.
It's interesting you say that. I often tell people, at speaking engagements and otherwise, they're excited when it's over and, whoever the speaker is. But in this case, if I'm the speaker and, the question, will you be my mentor?
Yeah.
When we haven't yet met,
Right.
we have no relationship. And I say, that's kind of like asking, will you marry me before we go on a first date? And you write about this in your book, What Do You Need? About the approach that would be a good approach for getting someone to fulfill that mentorship role, which is not, will you be my mentor first second? What do you think is a good approach?
I think, first of all, we need to stop asking the question, will you be my mentor? And I think what we really need to do is understand what mentorship is. And if we understand what it is, then we'll stop asking people to have this formal relationship. Mentorship is really an exchange of information with someone who's walked that path before you. And that can be done through a series of phone calls, touch points, meetings. But you really are looking for someone that you share some commonalities with, because that's how the relationship could grow and become meaningful. If you're just reaching out to someone because they are a big name or a big title, but you can't really find something that connects you guys, then the relationship isn't going to be very sustainable. And so you're looking for someone who maybe you see yourself in them, maybe you want to be them one day, so that the relationship can be rooted in authenticity and not necessarily transactional. But the best way to start is to reach out. It could be scary, but maybe you've met this person before at a speaking engagement or a conference or a panel. Maybe you're familiar with them through the industry, or maybe they work at your company. It could be a variety of things, but you know who they are. And maybe starting with LinkedIn to just request like 15 minutes of their time, it could be something. Also, it's identifying who those people are. Maybe you could be in a position to provide them with an opportunity. And that opportunity could look like it's a board opportunity, a volunteer opportunity, a speaking engagement, some sort of opportunity where now they're maybe taking interest in getting to know you because you asked them for something that helped them advance their career.
I think that's great advice. And one of the things that you write about in the book is how much you ask for in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I mean, there's such great advice in your book. I every page, like you don't want to miss a sentence because you can tell that you've processed a lot of information and you've talked to a lot of people over the years and you really pour it in. And one of those comments that you make, Lauren, is, don't ask somebody to lunch first. The 15 minutes is great. Something short, something that the investment is not more than that person is willing or able to give, so that it's not a no before there's even a chance for a yes.
Yeah. And also if you're asking for, if you're asking something of others, you want it to be like a low bar, right? It's a low bar. If someone says, Lauren, do you have 15 minutes on a Friday? Like, I probably do. And it's a low hanging fruit ask. It's not this big ask. It's not, can you get me into an event? Can you connect me with this person? Can you endorse me on LinkedIn? It's just a low, like, do I have 15 minutes? Probably. And those 15 minutes can turn into 30 minutes. But if you start small, it's a way for both of you all to get to know each other. You can learn a lot from someone in 5 to 10 minutes. And you can learn, do you want to continue the conversation or do you want to stop here?
One of the things that you coach women on through Colorcomm, and certainly over the years it has evolved, but what are the questions that you ask? What should you do when you're sitting down next to whoever might be there so that you don't miss out on that opportunity, which I think is so important, Lauren, because very often, especially if there is a speaker, if there's a panel or an individual speaking, people focus all of their attention on that person, even before it's time for them to talk, and don't notice the people sitting around them.
Yeah.
The question, which is the title of your book, What Do You Need? You have said that started in the very earliest of days of Colorcomm. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So 13 years ago, when I started Colorcomm, it was not what it is today. I started Colorcomm over a luncheon, and it was to gather women of color in the industry, in the communications, marketing, and advertising arena. And over this luncheon, we had someone speak. But what we did was we structured this experience a little bit differently. And so I threw this question out there, what do you need? Because I believed that someone in the room has something to give and something to receive, and that networking could be mutually beneficial. It can be an exchange. A lot of times we go to networking events, we think only about ourselves. I need this contact, I need this introduction, but we don't necessarily think about how we can be of service to others. And by asking this question, it allows for us to build community. And so when we threw out the question 13 years ago in Washington, D.C., the needs varied. Some people hit professional needs. They might have said, okay, I need a contact at the New York Times, or I need an introduction to a client. But then there were some personal needs like, hey, I just moved to Washington, D.C. I'm looking for a hairstylist, or I'm looking for a new workout activity or a workout partner. And you'd be surprised by having the conversation how many people in the room can service that need, but also have some of the same needs that, someone else might need a hairstylist, someone else might need a workout buddy and how we can come together and really build community and work together.
I love that. And I've heard this so often, Lauren, when people move to, especially if they're places,
New cities.
because your audience, your community is women of color.
Yeah.
And when you move someplace that doesn't have a large community of women of color,
Right.
where in the world do you get your hair done is one of those super important questions.
For sure.
And you got to be able to trust that
Yes.
the person you're asking can tell you. So even though some people might be laughing when they hear that, that to me resonates so strongly because it's real and it's personal. Like the workout buddy, somebody you will trust.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that people felt comfortable from the beginning being able to ask those questions of the people in the room was unique because, again, like I mentioned, a lot of times we are just looking at whoever is supposed to be the highlighted person rather than the person sitting next to you. So this idea of what do you need, you outline through the book. You go through lots of different things that people might need.
Yeah.
One area that I think is so important and it's vast at the same time is relationships.
Yeah.
All kinds of relationships that are important in life. And you make the point that, of course, you need to have the skill for whatever the task is that you have, and that is where you want to go.
Yeah.
But I think relationships are equally as important as skills, and sometimes they may be even more important.
Yeah.
Can you break down what relationships you think are essential for a woman of color who is looking to ascend in her career?
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. And when I say having the skill first, and I always talk about doing the work first, because
Yes.
you want to, and I believe these are really your needs in the workplace, but you need to make a name for yourself. And that's a whole chapter that I talk about. And what does that look like in terms of making a name for yourself? I think it's going back to the basics, and it all starts for what are you known for? What is the work that you do that can kind of set you apart a little bit, whether you do it well, whether you do it strategically, whether you do the work fast, because that has to be the jumping off point and the leverage point for someone to even want to mentor you, sponsor you, and build those relationships. We want to be around people who are killing it. We want to be around rock stars. We don't want to be around people who just do the bare minimum, just get by. Years ago, I talk about this in my book that I had a friend at the time, and more like a business associate at the time, come to me, and we were kind of, we were friends, we hung out, we were like business associates, but it was more structured on business. And she knew that I had some connections. So every now and then she would send me a note and say, hey, can I get an email to this person's email? I'm looking for this contact. I'd send it to her. Fine. No big deal. I'm sure she'll help me out some other time. It was no big deal. But one time she sent me an Excel grid of the 25 contacts that she needed. Ooh. And there are the 25 companies and the 25 names. And she made the assumption that I knew most of them, which I did, because she could see my work. A lot of what Colorcomm does is very public in terms of the panels that we bring, the speakers, the conferences. So you have an idea of who I know based off the work that I do.
Yep.
So she was very familiar that I knew all these people. And she said, okay, here's my Excel grid. Can you help me out with these names? And I bring up this point to talk about not only the obvious, how frustrating that was and inappropriate that was, but I bring it up as an example to show you that how much relationships have to be cultivated, and they are with care, and to not just share people's contact information without their approval and their consent, because you've spent, which I'll talk about myself, I spent the years building these relationships, the years being invested in their lives beyond just work, but being invested in their personal lives, caring about their birthdays, their kids, being involved in an organic and genuine way. So just to give you the Excel grid means that you didn't take the time to invest in, do the work. You didn't take the time to do the work. You didn't show up to conferences to meet these people. You didn't take the time to do the work. And so much of building relationships is us doing our own
That's right.
homework
Of course.
and connecting with them one-on-one or in groups or all of that. And so I just point that out, that when you do build your network, your board of advisors and your relationships, as you will, as everyone does, is to be mindful of the work that you put into it, invested into it.
Absolutely. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to Lauren Wesley Wilson, author. Her new book, What Do You Need? How Women of Color Can Take Ownership of Their Careers to Accelerate Their Path to Success. Every word in that subtitle is important. Taking ownership of their careers. And a lot of people, go to school, they have an idea of what they want to do. It isn't usually 1, 2, 3 immediately getting to whatever that goal is that you have, right, Lauren? I mean, there are some twists and turns.
A lot of twists.
But even though there will be twists, planning is important. And a lot of what you talk about in this book includes planning. I want to address something that you talk about early on in the book that I think happens to a lot of young professionals. You put in a lot of effort. I get to work on time or early. I do everything I'm asked to do. I do it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
I may even leave late, but I'm back the next morning, ready to go, but maybe not going to, as you describe in the book, the hockey game or the activity that doesn't necessarily interest you.
Right.
But you're all in when it comes to work. What is the mistake that is made when people don't participate in these extracurriculars?
Yeah. Well, we hold ourselves back, quite frankly. And whenever we decide to show up and we make a choice. We decide we're going to go work somewhere for whatever reason. It could be the money, it could be the location, it could be the type of work that we do. But we're making a choice. We decide, okay, I want to go work at this company. That means we need to choose to participate in the company culture. And what that looks like is to get involved in the company culture. And meaning that there will be a lot of things that the company does that we may not love to do. It may not resonate with us, but I want us to say yes more than 50% of the time. So if there's a sporting event that your company has a box towards, if it's a kickball league that they want you to show up, if it's a lunch with a colleague, let's work on saying yes more than 50% of the time. I understand we're not going to be able to do everything. We have lives outside of work. Some of us don't want to socialize with our coworkers. I completely get that. We don't always want to do that. But the reason why I encourage it more than 50% of the time is that's when you're going to be able to get to know your coworkers on a human level. And that's where you really are going to get to know the company you work for. You're not going to really know your company just by doing the work and going home. You're going to get to know your company because everyone has a different perspective. Everyone has a different piece of information, right? That if you all come together and talk, you're gonna learn, when is the promotion cycle?
Mm-hmm.
What people at the company are the most influential? Just because you have a title doesn't mean you have the most influence. How do I get my projects greenlit? What is the strategy if I don't like an assignment or if I don't like a client? What do I do to get off that project? Because everything is about being nuanced. And we can't just go in and think, okay, I can just communicate. It's about how you communicate, the timing of your communication, what is being said, your tone, all these things, which can frankly be sometimes stressful, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes exhausting, but it's par for the course. And if we're equipped with the knowledge and information, it won't feel as hard. It's only hard when we don't know. When no one has pulled us aside to say, this is how you get what you want here. This is how you get what you need here. Because no one's going to pull us aside and do that. And so it takes effort on our end to make an effort, do our homework outside of work, connect with our colleagues in an organic way. That information's just going to come out. You don't have to sit up here and have 10 questions if you go to the sporting event. Just by being around, you're going to learn.
You're saying so many things that I think are important. I hope folks are listening closely. One thing that I think is a challenge for some is this idea that I have to do all this work outside of work. I already work a lot of hours. I already work more than 8 hours a day. If you're salaried, you don't get paid more than whatever even if you work 10 hours, you may not get paid for more than 8. If you are on an hourly pay scale, because some people are, and you work more hours, but your job is only going to give you so much. I've talked to a lot of people like this, and I want you to address, if you're looking to build something, you're building your life, your career, but you feel some kind of way about putting in time that is not being compensated for directly. What can you say to people that may help them to think a little bit differently about that investment?
Well, sometimes it's not only money that we're after.
Mhm.
Sometimes it could be flexibility, it could be autonomy, it could be independence within our groups, not having your boss necessarily micromanage you and check in all the time, but have some flexibility as it relates to if you have an emergency, if you need to go see your child's soccer game, but they're flexible and they allow you to do that because there's some trust there. And they know that when needed, you will go the extra mile because you've shown up in other ways that have shown us that's shown us that you're part of the company culture, you're a team player, and you got the company's back because you made forth the effort. I would say that's sometimes where the things that we are looking for show up. And it might not be instantly money. But on the flip side, right, we have to also, sometimes I gotta say this, the subtitles talks about taking ownership, right? So there might be hours that are extra that are required for you, but also note that there are days when you don't work, we're not at full capacity.
That's true.
Where you might come in late by an hour, you might need to leave early, or you just might not have it in you. Like you're just, you know what, you're there, you're physically there, but you're not necessarily working that hard. You're giving us 10%, you're not giving us 100. You're there, you're physically there, but you're not really doing anything.
And by the way, Lauren, in this hybrid world, sometimes you're not even there. And I mean, that's something that I think is important for people to think about. If you speak to yourself honestly, you don't have to tell anybody else, but if you tell yourself on those hybrid days when you're at home, how hard
are you really working?
How hard are you working? How many hours are you actually doing something else? And okay, you don't necessarily have to tell your boss, but when you need to go the extra mile, do it and don't complain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the employees that I see really succeed in the workplace are ones that get on board with the company. Look, your company is not going to be perfect, right? Like no company is. I promise you it's not. But you want to show that you're a team player. You want to show that your values align with theirs. So hopefully they do when you say yes to work somewhere. You want to show that you will roll up your sleeves and go the extra mile. And then in turn, you want your company to recognize you going the extra mile. You want them to appreciate your work. You want to eventually be compensated for it. So all of the things I talk about in this book are all people who want to advance. But many people don't. Many people are fine. They want to stay where they are. They kind of got in a rhythm with where they are, and that's perfectly okay. Everybody doesn't want to be in leadership. Everybody doesn't want to be a CEO. Everybody does not want to make decisions or manage people. But if you are that person who is ambitious, who does not want to be in the role for 5 years, that does want to make good money where they work, because money is out there. It's out there for people who perform. And if you want what you see your colleague has, and you're saying like, look, I want a 30K increase, or I want flexibility here, or I want trust, and I'm looking for all those things in the workplace, then there are certain things that you're going to need to do. And there's this phrase I use: if you want more, you're going to need to do more.
That's it. That's it. You've been on the circuit doing lots of interviews, and one of those interviews on The View,
yes,
folks, and the way social works, people can say anything in writing, right? So there were some comments proving something that you already know. And it doesn't mean that people don't want to succeed, but sometimes their definition of how to succeed and what they think you have to do in order to succeed differs.
Yeah.
And so, and I am much like you in it's kind of an old school belief. I think it's old school, but I think it works now. You need to know what the culture is where you're working or where you choose to work because this is a choice and make decisions on how you present yourself and how you move through space, the way that you communicate with others, all these things in alignment with that business where you want to excel. So you got a lot of pushback on that, calling you old fashioned, saying, people challenging you. Why can't we be ourselves? Why can't we be authentically us? This is a new day. And I want you to address that because I think a lot of people struggle with this. How can I be myself
Yeah.
and get them to value me and see me and succeed in this place that, doesn't look like me? Yeah. So can you speak to that?
Sure. I did get a lot of comments, 50% probably understood what I meant, and then
Yeah.
50% did not. Um, so there's several things that I addressed, and one of the things that I talked about was the idea of bringing your whole self to work. And it's a conversation that we've been having for many years now. And I've debunked the myth of bring your whole self to work. Now, I don't want that to be confused with your authentic self. You should absolutely bring your authentic self to work. You should be who you are. Authenticity is important. Be who you are. But let it not be an excuse to challenge existing norms within your company. And so if there are existing standards and rules, for example, if your company says, we're only going to reserve jeans on Friday, but you say, well, my authentic self is wearing jeans every day. So I'm not going to be able to only wear jeans on Friday. I have to wear them on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday too. Then that's not okay. It's just not okay. I think when I talk about not bringing your whole self to work, what I'm focused on is not bringing the drama. We're all human beings. We all have stuff, right? We have baggage. We're human beings. But in the workplace, it's about connecting with your colleagues, and you should bring your commonalities, things that allow you to do better work together, not things that allow you to be thought about in a way that isn't your best self. If you bring your drama, your relationship issues, the baggage into the workplace, then it allows people to say, okay, well, she has a really hot mess personal life. That obviously means that's why her work is really awful.
Yeah, all kinds of assumptions. Yeah.
All these assumptions. And to some degree, if you work long enough at a company, people are going to know your business because it's natural. You're going to tell them. You might tell them about your divorce. You might tell them about a death in your family. It's just not something you need to lead with on day one.
Mhm.
Or
Very, very
day 90.
No, that's very important. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking to the author of What Do You Need? How Women of Color Can Take Ownership of Their Careers to Accelerate Their Path to Success. We're talking to Lauren Wesley Wilson. She is the founder and CEO of Colorcomm, which has become such a dynamic gathering of women to learn and grow and network. And so you mentioned earlier that Colorcomm, of the original Colorcomm and today, it's grown so much.
Yeah.
What would you describe Colorcomm as today?
I get that question all the time because everyone's like confused. So the brand Colorcomm, we're divided into two sectors. One is our core business, how we got started, which is our membership-based community, focusing on advancing women of color to executive leadership positions where they work and making sure they have the tools and resources to succeed. Many women of color work in predominantly white environments, and we want to be able to say, this is a community for you to succeed, and this is how you can improve, this is what you can do better, and this is how you can reframe your thinking around your career. And then also, we're a client service business. We work on marketing and communication strategy for a number of brands, and that's who we are, and that's really our work. I also want to add, which is a recent title change, is that USA Today has named us best-selling author What do you need? So we are a
Yay!
bestseller. This book is a bestseller based on USA Today's standards. So I was really proud.
Congratulations. That
Thank
is
you.
wonderful. And I mean, you're
Thank
just
you.
a few weeks out of the gate. So this is
Yes.
what's just going to grow. And honestly, Lauren, I understand why. The book, as I said, every sentence has information and it's very intentional. And I think that what you're talking about, all that I've ever heard you talk about, so you're consistent, and being consistent is something that you say in the book that people need to do because it defines who you are.
Yeah.
But being intentional
Mm,
about who you are and how you show up in the world and letting people understand who you are, that's all really important.
mm.
And when we talk about doing this for women of color, you know, unfortunately, we still live in a world that is racist and sexist.
Yeah.
Not everybody,
Not everyone.
but these things exist.
Yeah.
Ageism is another part of it. You know, the isms are there.
Yeah.
What do you say to women of color to help them look beyond a lens that says they're less than for whatever reason? How in 2024, how do you, through Colorcomm, help to empower women to believe that regardless of whatever somebody else may see as uh, a difference, that they can be successful and use everything about who they are as a positive?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, there are a lot of isms in the workplace. And so often, what I have seen is that a lot of times women of color want to take on these battles, right? We want to try to fight and change some of the isms in the workplace, the microaggressions, the racism. We want to, of course, we want to have it documented. We want to educate some of our leaders about some of the comments or some of the way you were talked to. And it's a fine line because on the one hand, if something's very egregious and something's very egregious, yes, it does need to be confronted. But I think that we also have to be able to decipher between people who just put their foot in their mouth. They have good intention. They're maybe well-meaning human beings, but they put their foot in their mouth. They ask you a dumb question about your hair, about your race, about your skin tone, about your culture, about, where are you from? And yes, that is inappropriate and frustrating, but on the other hand, we have to be able to compartmentalize, because if we take on every sort of point to try to fight, we are losing out on time and losing out on energy to really get to where we need to go. Because if we took that amount of time and that energy that we oftentimes spend trying to educate, trying to teach, trying to course correct, we could be putting that time and energy on figuring out what accounts do I need to be on, what projects do I need to be on, who are the decision makers at this company, how do I get time with them, how do I learn this business where I'm working so that I can get smart on what my company values and I can go out and get what my company values. So ultimately, I'm primed to be in a position that adds value, that can be looked at for promotions, that can be, getting promoted off cycle, like all these different things, because I don't want us to spend all our time trying to change systems that weren't put in place by us in the first place. And we're going to spend all our time trying to change these systems that, quite frankly, if they wanted to change, they would.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're masked as we're looking like we're changing. We're looking like we're making progress when really we're not. Because if we want to make progress, we would. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a slow haul, but it doesn't mean that even within these systems, you can still have a good career. Even within these systems, you can still make good money with where you work. Because if you go back to the basics and do some of the things that are in this book, many people are not doing what's in this book. So you are going to stand out. You are going to look like a team player. You are going to look like you are contributing. You are going to look like you're adding value, and all those things you are actually doing. Mm-hmm. And so if you start to reframe your thinking, you can compartmentalize some of that other BS and say, look, I'm going to be focused on getting what I need from my employer and, understand that some of these people that work here could just be bad apples. Doesn't mean it's reflective of the entire company, but I'm going to spend less time trying to fight a system and a battle that won't change. But in the meantime, I actually can move up within this framework.
Mhm. I think that's really important. And so here's another facet of the part of this conversation. When, and you say this in the book, that many of the people, many of the women of color who you've encountered over these years are the only or one of few, whether it is a female in the room, a woman of color in the room, a woman of color in leadership. So sometimes when we find ourselves in those situations, and then there's one other,
Yeah.
another who comes in, there is this fear. Uh-oh, I'm going to be replaced. I'm in competition with this
Yeah.
woman. There can only be one.
Right.
Is something that we have been taught
Yeah.
for generations.
Mhm.
And one of your chapters is you need to support the women of color around you. I want you to talk about that and how, from a mindset perspective, can we do that when it's not an ill-perceived notion that sometimes there can only be one. And if another one comes in the room, there's the possibility that that woman will end up replacing you. How do you work through all of the emotions that are part of this experience and choose to acknowledge and support the other women of color?
Yeah, I think we need to normalize excellence. I talk about this in my book. I was very much this product of that way of thinking. And having grown up in St. Louis, Missouri, where predominantly for 18 years, I'd spent around white friends and in white neighborhoods and white private schools. And so when I went to Spelman College and I made the choice to go to Spelman College, I was shell shocked. And it was such an eye-opening experience, but I wasn't used to seeing this much excellence, this much diversity within my own race, this much variety, this much interest, and it exists. But we're oftentimes not in those spaces, or we're in environments where there isn't enough of us. And so I wrote the supporting the women of color around you. That was really for allies. That was a whole section on allyship. But
That's true. Yeah.
but I also want to emphasize the importance of us working together, because no one is where they are by themselves.
Right.
We all have had people support us, whether it's someone who's older than us or our peer group, but we've had people open doors for us. And I just want to encourage that we continue to open those doors for others. We're not only thinking about, ourselves.
And actually, so to your point, this is the whole section on becoming an ally. In which I read, but I went to that other place because it happens so often that we feel this fear.
We're afraid. We're like, are we going to lose our position because this
Right.
amazing dynamic person sounds kind of like me, looks like me, has the same flavor as me, and they're killing it too, but we're both killing it. Is this competition?
And we become judgmental sometimes and point the finger, and it's sort of a misplaced pointing. But perhaps, as this section of your book points out, perhaps if others who are not women of color become better allies, then this whole construct that shouldn't even be there may loosen up.
Yeah, might. I think that, I talk about this, we should help each other in the workplace, but one thing I oftentimes say in my book is we need to focus on ourselves. And this doesn't mean don't help anyone. That's not what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But what I mean by focus on ourselves, we get into the comparison syndrome a lot. Well, this person's making more, or this person got this assignment, and we need to be focusing on ourselves, because sometimes we don't think we don't have all the information we think we do. And it could be unfair. There are so many things that are unfair, but we need to be focusing on how do we show up in the best way possible? How do we receive feedback? Because feedback is a gift. We hear that all the time. It's a cliche. People always say feedback is a gift. It truly is. And this is why many people do not spend the time to give the feedback that you need to improve. And feedback is the only way in which you're going to improve and which you're going to be able to grow. If someone withholds that because they're too afraid to coach you, because you might be defensive, or because they don't want it to be a racial issue, or they just don't have the time or energy to coach you, then you're making more mistakes than you're unaware of. And you could have been course correcting all this time if someone pulled you to a side to share some of the things that they're seeing in your behavior, in your work product, in your effort. And that's really, really important, because many of us in the workplace, we don't even know each other. The majority of us will have met each other for the first time in the workplace.
Yeah.
We might have heard of you. We might, at the very least, we might have heard of you. We might know about your reputation, or for the majority, especially starting out, you don't have really a reputation. So we're meeting you for the very first time. There isn't this vendetta against you. It is, and if you hear it more than once, likely it's true. There's always a special case where someone could just be out to get you, and maybe that feedback really isn't true. But if you are starting to hear it from 3 or 4 people, they're seeing something in you that you need to start paying attention to, whether you like the messenger or not.
Fair point.
You need to start paying attention to it.
Fair point. You addressed something that many people talk about a lot these days, which is it's in your Forging Your Future section about combating burnout.
Yeah.
And I want to say, really, we are now living in a world that defines itself pre-COVID and post-COVID. Even though we had burnout before,
Yeah.
a lot of people who were fortunate enough to be able to work during the pandemic worked so much. And because we were working from home, the lines were completely blurred.
Yeah.
If you could work, you often didn't even get up to go to the bathroom. You were at that computer just working.
Mm-hmm.
And burnout became a much bigger issue. And people are like, wait a minute. Instead of work-life balance, it became life-work balance. And a lot of people started looking differently at how they want to spend their time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about burnout and success, and what people can do if they feel that they're facing burnout now?
Yeah. No, with burnout, I say that we're all in control of how much we take on. And we're able to say no. Like, we are, because we can't put the responsibility into other people. They don't know necessarily what you're capable of, how fast you work, the time that it takes you to do something. If you say yes to take on a project, I'm assuming you're going to do it great. You're going to get it done on time. I'm not aware of all the things that you have on your plate. And so I recommend that we get in the better job of prioritizing our own workload, that we're honest with our own selves, right? Taking ownership, and that we're communicating with our managers and leaders on what we can do. We don't want to say no. You don't want to say, nope, can't do it. But what you want to do is provide a solution. Like, I have these 5 projects that I'm working on. And in order to take on project number 6, one of these 5 are going to have to be on the back burner. Are you okay with that? Or if these 5 projects are super important to you, I'm not able to take on project 6, but I can line up somebody who can. So how are we solution oriented? And a lot of that is nuanced, because young people today will come up to you and they'll say, or Gen Z will say, nope, can't do it. No solution, no problem solve, no real reason why. Just no. And you need more than that in the workplace than just no.
I'm going to say you need more than that in life usually.
Yeah.
Because no, another argument is no is a complete sentence.
Yes, we know. Yeah.
And what's the strategy around no? So that you aren't slamming a door and then therefore other doors are slammed. Yeah. Hey guys, this is Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. We are talking with the author of What Do You Need? How Women of Color Can Take Ownership of Their Careers to Accelerate Their Path to Success. She is Lauren Wesley Wilson, the founder and CEO of Colorcomm, and we're so happy to have her here today. Lauren, something that makes me extra proud of you is that you're a mom. You just had a baby. And, as is true for most professional women who have children, we got to see you on stage in lots of different places as you were pregnant, and carrying, with dignity and clarity and being your fully present self. What was it like for you working through that whole process of being pregnant and then having your child, and now you have a young child and doing all the things that
Yeah.
you do in your work?
Yeah, I mean, being pregnant was awesome to some degree because I had some challenges in
Mhm.
pregnancy that I talked about in Ebony and fibroid issues and things, but it also allowed me to really stay put because I'm pregnant. And so therefore, I'm not zipping off to city. I'm like, in New York, locked in, focusing on the work. But it really opened up, I think, more of a work-life balance for me because I've always been kind of just like a doer and get it done. But it allowed me to, like, when I was having fibroid issues or when I was having challenges, like, to take the time that I need to get better because all of this will be here. And now that the baby's here, she's 7 months, it's a balancing act and it allows you to really prioritize your time because you don't have much of it anymore. And the things that you used to do, you can't do because you're on the baby schedule and not your own. And so anything that I'm doing, I have to really want to do it because, your time is very limited. But that should be with anything, right? Like if we should only be doing things we really want to do.
And it definitely changes your perspective. I remember when I was pregnant, I was taping a 13-episode television series, and I never told them I was pregnant. I
Wow.
didn't pop until 6 months, and we ended at 5.5 months. I was really, really lucky. And then after that, when she was born, I was on a book tour. So literally,
Oh my
Lauren,
goodness.
I had
You
my
know how
daughter
I feel.
I had my daughter in one hand, I'm signing books in the other. It was just it was crazy and the best possible thing, right? Isn't it just the best?
It is. It is. It's how it is then because
I
book
do,
tour is crazy.
and somehow we're able to do all of these things.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
as we leave, Lauren, what if you could choose? You have a whole book of advice, and I
Yeah.
recommend that everybody that you pick this book up now. What do you need? How women of color can take ownership of their careers to accelerate their path to success. But what is one thing absolutely that you want everyone to know that everyone should do um, to get to that point that is their dream and their desire?
Well, first and foremost, read the book because we have so many people who buy and support who never get around to reading books.
That's
I'd
true.
say just
Good
carve
point.
out time, listen to it on Audible, carve out, a day or two and read the book. Be committed to change, be committed to being honest with yourself because this book is about taking ownership. And I know I've talked to people who I've said some things in that book that have been triggering, and that's a good thing because that means you might have fallen into a category that you were maybe not aware of. And now through the book, you might see yourself in some of those examples that I provided throughout my journey. And I also want us to really realize that no matter what, we are in control of our career. If we
Mhm.
want it, we can have it. And it's because we're following the basic needs within this book. If we want it, we can have it. If you want to make money, and if that's your goal, you can do that. If your goal is flexibility, you can have that. If your goal is to make sure you're in a position that you're being valued at work and that you're bringing things to the table, new ideas, all of that can happen for you. Your employer is in control to some extent, but you're more in control than you realize. By following some of those guidelines, you can get everything you need out of your company. And I want women to be successful. I want them to say, look, I've wasted time over here. I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to follow some of these principles. I'm going to start asking myself, what do I need at work and what do I need of others? And I'm going to be in the position to add value so that I can live a life that I want. I want to live a fulfilling professional life. I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't want to be on the clock. I don't want to be making a mistake and being fear that I'm going to be fired. I want to be in a place where if I make mistakes, it's a time for growth, not I'm going to get fired because I made a mistake. And all of these things are within our control through the decisions that we make, our choices, how we show up. And if we're even selecting the company to begin with that allows us to grow because we've done our research. And then chapter 1 says, you need to know if you belong. Chapter 1.
And if you figure it out in the beginning, you make fewer mistakes. Thank you, Lauren. Congratulations on this book. I recommend it to everyone. It's an excellent read. Excellent read because there's so much information here that's actionable. And I think that is what Lauren's intention was. I mean, we could go on, but if you read it, then you'll get it all. It's right here in this book. Thank you, Lauren Wesley Wilson, author of What Do You Need? And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Dreamleapers with Harriette Cole. Pick up your copy of What Do You Need now. Until next time, have a great day and make it count.